All right, today we're going to talk about something really powerful, a way to make change in an organization actually stick. It's called the Improvement Kata, and it's a kind of scientific pattern for building a real culture of continuous improvement. So let's dive right in.
First, let's start with a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why do so many of these big improvement programs just fizzle out? You know the drill. You bring in new tools, you run the workshops, you see a little bit of progress, but then a year later, it feels like you're right back where you started. It's incredibly frustrating, and it happens all the time.
And this quote from David Mann really gets to the heart of it. A lot of the time, we just end up reinforcing the old habits. When things get tough, people just fall back on what they know, their old tricks. And what that tells us is, the problem isn't really about the tools we're using. The real problem is that we haven't changed the deep-down patterns of how we think and act every day.
And that leads us straight into what you could call the improvement trap. It's this endless cycle of focusing on solutions and tools while totally missing the invisible stuff, the routines and thought patterns that are actually driving all the behavior.
Okay, so what's the solution? Well, it comes from this fantastic Japanese concept called kata. A kata is basically a routine, a pattern of behavior that you practice over and over until it becomes second nature. Think about a martial artist practicing a form, or a musician just endlessly playing scales. You're not just learning one move or one note, you're literally wiring a fundamental pattern into your brain and your muscle memory, so you can do it perfectly without even thinking about it.
And that, right there, is the huge shift in thinking. The old way is all about implementing static tools, like installing some new software. But the kata approach is about practicing dynamic routines. It's the classic difference between giving someone a fish and teaching them how to fish. We're moving away from these temporary, one-off fixes and toward building a lasting internal ability to improve right across the whole organization.
So, what does this practice routine actually look like? Well, it's called the Improvement Kata, and it's a 4-step scientific pattern that pretty much anyone can use to improve a process or tackle a really tough goal.
So here are the 4 steps. First, you understand the direction. What's the big picture vision? Where are we trying to go? Second, you grasp the current condition, and that means what's really happening right now. No guesswork, just the facts. Third, you set the next target condition, a very specific, measurable, and kind of challenging goal that gets you one step closer to that big vision. And fourth, and this is key, you experiment towards that target. You run these small, rapid tests to learn your way forward. It's really just the scientific method, but applied to our daily work.
Now, the really important thing to get here is that this is not a rigid plan you have to follow blindly. The path to any big, meaningful goal is always going to be fuzzy and uncertain. The Improvement Kata gives you a scientific routine for navigating that fog. It's a framework for learning and adapting one small experiment at a time.
But here's the kicker. People don't just learn this new way of thinking all by themselves. It has to be taught, it has to be coached. And that requires a very specific pattern of teaching from managers and leaders, which, you guessed it, is called the coaching kata.
The coaching itself follows his own simple routine, a set of 5 core questions. The coach asks about the target, the current situation, the obstacles, what the next step is, but pay attention to what the coach is not doing. They are not giving answers. Their whole job is to guide the learner through their own scientific thinking process.
As John Shook so perfectly describes it, the manager's whole goal is to understand the learner's thinking. The conversation itself becomes the tool for development. The point isn't just to solve this one problem, it's to build the problem-solving muscle of the person and the team.
And when you put these 2 routines together, the Improvement Kata for the person doing the work and the coaching kata for the manager, you get something totally new, a fundamentally more powerful way to manage and lead your teams.
This really flips the traditional role of a manager on its head. A traditional manager provides answers, directs the work. Their value is based on what they know. But a kata coach? They ask questions to develop their people. Their value comes from growing the team's capabilities. You're shifting from being the chief problem solver to creating an entire organization of them.
Now, this scientific thinking isn't just an abstract conversation. It's usually made visible and structured with a simple tool called an A3 report. You can think of it like a problem-solving storyboard, all on a single sheet of paper. It follows the exact logic of the Improvement Kata, and it captures the whole story, from the challenge all the way to the next experiment. It just makes the coaching conversation super focused, factual, and clear for everyone.
Which leaves us with a final, really powerful question for anyone in a leadership role. Just think about your daily interactions. Are you managing to get answers and direct tasks?
Or are you coaching to develop the thinking and the capability of your people? The answer to that question might just determine your entire organization's ability to adapt and to win. Thanks for joining me.